So now that we understand what is to be eliminated, what is to cease, this is the cycle of samsara or reincarnation, or the continuation of a conscious craving or attachment to a non existent reality. The next question is, well, what is the ceasing of all that? What is this state that we are aiming at, which is called nirvana, or the snuffing out of the candle? It's very deceptive to call it that, though. In fact, we cannot define nirvana, because to define nirvana is to not be in the state of nirvana, as we're going to see later on when we talk about the path to nirvana. So it's better to understand nirvana in terms of what it's not. First of all, it's not the extinction of the self. It's not as if once I come to this ceasing of attachment or craving to my continuing existence, then I go out, I snuff out, and I no longer exist. It can't be, because there was never an I to start with. So there was no I to kill. There was no extinction to occur, because there was nothing to kill. You have to be alive to die, don't you? You have to be alive to be extinguished. And so it's not an extinguishing in that literal sense of the extinction of the self. That's really important. It's just a recognition of what was already there or not there, and that's this I. So that's the one thing. Well, it's not then an escape from suffering either. An escape implies this idea that you're in this cycle, and that somehow, like a merry-go-round, you can get off of it and go to a new realm. But there is no new realm. There is no outside of samsara. This is the totality of reality. And so you don't escape to a new state. It's not the result of something you do that then produces this new world of existence for you. And this is crucial, because let's say it was the result of something you do, then it itself would be dependent, wouldn't it, on conditions. And so nirvana itself would be this dependent reality that itself is produced by conditions, and because it arises, it therefore can cease, can it? And so nirvana is not conditioned like that. It can't be a result. No more than the path up a mountain, which leads you to the mountain, produces the mountain. The path leads you to something that's already there. You just don't know it until you get there, or until you're on the mountain. And the fact is the path is what allows you to see you're already on the mountain. So, thus nirvana isn't a result. And therefore it's not something new or different than your present state of existence. And that's why nirvana can be something that you experience right here and now. That's why the Buddha entered nirvana, not literally entered, but got into that state of nirvana through the Buddha's enlightenment. He didn't have to die to go to nirvana. Nirvana is not some heaven. So then what is nirvana? Nirvana is just a new view or understanding of the same reality that we already exist in. It's just the correct view. It's the view that doesn't therefore produce attachment or suffering. One way to think of that, how nirvana, that enlightenment doesn't change anything, is to look at this picture right here. This is a very famous picture. You don't know this, but it is. A philosopher named Wittgenstein, whom I've mentioned before, who lived during the 20th century, came up with this, what is called a certain, I'm not going to tell you the name. I want you to first think about what it looks like. Now, some of you are going to immediately say, oh, it's a duck. And it does look like a duck. You see, there's the bill, and then its mouth, and there's its eye and its head, right? But others of you will have looked at it and immediately say, that's not a duck, that's a rabbit. See, that's its ears, and there's its head and its eye. Now you notice how those of you who immediately saw a duck did not see rabbit, did you? And when I mentioned rabbit, you look at it, and now you see the same thing, but in a new way, don't you? But before, you could never have seen rabbit, but now that you see the rabbit, you can't unsee it, can you? In the same sense, those of you who saw rabbit and didn't see duck, now can't unsee the duck. once you have this new view, your whole reality changes, but really it doesn't. Just your view changes. The same reality was right there, the same shape existed, but now you see it in a whole new way. Think of it again like the old movie, The Wizard of Oz. If you remember, Dorothy was trying to get home from Oz. She goes to the wizard thinking that somehow this other being, this higher, more powerful, magical being is going to be able to get her back home. But what does the wizard teach her? That she was never gone from home to start with. That in fact, she was always home. She was just dreaming that she wasn't. Have you ever had a dream that you believed was real? It was so vivid it felt real. But in the middle of the dream, you realized you were dreaming. And you notice sometimes you don't leave the dream at that point, right? You don't wake up. You're still in the dream, but now your whole view of what the reality is in the dream has changed now. Now the dream is empty of real existence, even though you're still in it. That's nirvana. Nirvana is enlightenment. It's a change of view. The key is it's not just a mental change of view, it's a change of your entire way of experiencing the reality that was always there around you. And that's why nirvana can't be described, except perhaps in negative terms. Because to describe nirvana is to take the limited and finite and conditioned categories that produce our minds, and therefore our suffering, and then try to apply it to a state that is not conditioned at all by anything, precisely because it doesn't attach to anything. And so therefore nirvana is the truth beyond description. And that truth can only be experienced directly. It can never be described. It can never be the object of what you might call intellectual or analytical or even philosophical knowledge. And so what we see here is a very important point about Buddhism that differs from people like Schopenhauer and Western philosophy. It's the belief that reason itself can't get you at ultimate reality. That even though Schopenhauer's reasoning can get us to a very similar picture, that picture itself can never be the ultimate reality. And indeed, as long as we're caught in the grip of the picture that reason gives us, then we are still in the grip of suffering and craving and attachment. So we have to talk next about the way to nirvana. We have to talk about how we get up the mountain of truth that's already there, so that when we tap our ruby slippers, we realize that we've not gone anywhere but where we already were.